Conscription in the Middle Ages. How did conscription work back in the Middle Ages? I imagine it wasn't horribly different, but how did they deal with most peasant conscripts not having any real weapons or armor? Would lords spend some money to arm them with spears and stuff, or no? Bloodiest wars imaginable? Warm take, but the high medieval period was unironically the least barbaric era of history. Wars weren't frequent, but relatively small and brief, and the nobility heavily involved themselves instead of leaving the peasantry to do all the dying for them. Compared to much larger scale wars of antiquity, or absurdly violent religious wars of the early modern period, or the total wars and civilian bombings of the 20th century, or wars that drag on forever despite zero popular support in the 21st century. There's really nothing especially cruel about what was going on in medieval times. But the high medieval period was unironically the least barbaric era of history? This is one of those contrarian viewpoints that people come up with to reframe a time in history and sound knowledgeable about the subject, but it's totally wrong. Peasants have basically always been fair game and easy pickings for molestation and murder, whether by invading armies or by rival landowners. Most knights were anything but chivalrous. The majority of them were entitled and oftentimes psychotic rich kids. You didn't really have conscription in the Middle Ages. The social contract was that if you were a free man, you bought some military equipment and might be called up to fight by your king. If you were a nobleman, you were basically a professional soldier by definition and spent your early life training to fight a war. You didn't really have conscription in the Middle Ages? Virtually everyone was conscripted in the Middle Ages. It was part of the citizenship contract, so to speak. The real difference is what you were conscripted to do, i.e. conscripted to farm or build or chop wood, perhaps. You can call that mere taxes, and you would be partially correct, but the difference is that today we pay taxes out of whatever we earn from whatever we choose to do. Whereas in those days, the Lord ordered you to do it, and you bloody well did it. If you were a free man, that's a massive if. In England and France, our benchmark for the Middle Ages, 50 to 80% of the population were villeins, not freedmen. This number goes further up the farther east you go. There was always a shortage of coin in medieval Europe. There simply wasn't enough gold and silver to mint enough coins. Since there wasn't enough coins to meet the demand for money, the rich and powerful would hoard it. This creates a problem for the common man. How do you save when you can't get your hands on enough coins to do so? The answer, bartering and buying items of relatively fixed value that can be easily sold, pawned, or bartered. As a result, every free man and serf that could afford it would start buying arms and armor. Never a full suit of it, or with necessarily the goal to use it, but just because a helm is a helm and its price is rather fixed because in 10 years, it will still take as much iron to make and as much time for a smith to hammer out. As such, a levies would be armed and armored in a hodgepodge. Villages would also help equip a man that has to do his feudal duty or goes off as a mercenary. A dead man can't help take in the harvest. In a way, the common man collected arms and armor as the nobility collected land. High opportunistic, no overreaching vision or goal, and an ensemble of clashing styles. In a way, the common man collected arms and armor as the nobility collected land. Highly opportunistic, no overreaching vision or goal, and an ensemble of clashing styles. Bullshit. There were very clearly requirements of arms and armor in many areas. Moreover, every free layman who possesses chattels and rents to the value of 16M shall have a shirt of mail, a helmet, a shield, and a lance. And every free layman possessing chattels or rents to the value of 10M shall have a hauberk, an iron cap, and a lance. All burgesses in the whole community of freemen shall have a gambeson, an iron cap, and a lance. A size of arms of England, 1181. This is the law. He who has 12 pounds worth of land shall have spear and shield for the defense of the people, or pay it with 2 pounds. This is the law. He who has less shall have quiver and bow for the defense of his people, or pay it with 2 pounds. Frisian law, dated 1100. The man who owns 6 weighted marks except his clothes, he shall own a red shield with a double-sided iron rim, and spear and sword, or half-thinned axe. And every shield maker shall on the shields he make have a mark that is approved on the thing so you can know who made it. if there is found cheating in it. But if some does not have, then the shields are confiscatable by the king's hand. But every young man and those men who owns less than now is said, each of these shall own a shield and spear or sword or axe. But broad axes are good, and half-thinned axes, who is well hafted, and those spears that are dependably hafted and equipped with 2 nails, or at least one who goes straight and is riveted in both ends. Good shall for these men wooden shields be, when 3 iron bars lay across it, and there is 3 grips on the inside, who is well riveted. But when a working man takes his first service for full wages, then he shall the first summer buy an axe, the second a shield, and the third a spear. Land Law of Norway, 1274. How did conscription work back in the Middle Ages? Lords give their vassals an order to join up, simple as. This applies to both peasants and knights. I imagine it wasn't horribly different. In some ways it was. For example, imagine if 50 to 80% of everyone you know is a government worker and must do militia training every week. Quite different from the post-Renaissance private sector-driven society. But how did they deal with most peasant conscripts not having any real weapons or armor? The lords would usually call up enough people they could arm. Like, oh, we have 10 spears and boiled leather jerkins. Call up 10 of the best fighters in the village, and maybe 30 more idiots to fetch and carry. Would lords spend some money to arm them with spears and stuff, or no? Absolutely, yes.